بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So we have one more attribute from the attributes that don't have opposites. Remember, we broke down attributes into the attributes that have opposites and then those that do not have opposites. The ones that had opposites, I believe there's 4 pairs. You had Hamsin Jahar, then you had Shidda Rakhawa Bainiya, then you had Isti'la, Istifal, Itbaq, and Infitah. Then there are those that don't have opposites. There's 8 of them. So we have finished 7 of them. So as a review, those 8 were, let me read them out to you. Number 1, Safir, the whistling found in Za, Sin, Sad. Qalqala, Qutbu Jadin, that bounce in the letter, especially when it is sakin. Thereafter, we talked about Lin, which is Aw or A. Then there is Al-Inhiraf, which is the direction of the sound being altered in Lam and Ra. Thereafter, number 5 was Takrir, the capability of Ra to roll, and it is found once when we read the Ra. Number 6 was At-Tafashi, the spreading of the sound of Sheen in the mouth. The last one that we did was number 7, Al-Istitala, which is when pronouncing blood, the tongue is going to be pushed a little bit forward due to the expansion of the balloon of air behind the tongue. That's 7. And then number 8, which is the last one, is Al-Ghunna. Ghunna is a nasal characteristic. So he says here, nasalization. This is found in all noon and memes. Now, there's a thing that we say like reading with ghunna, like emphasizing the ghunna. And then there's just the character trait of ghunna. Every time we read noon and meme, there is some level of ghunna. The proof of this is if you were to close your nostrils, if you were to pinch it and say any kind of noon or meme, you would not be able to do so. Because a portion of the makhraj of noon and meme goes through the nasal cavity. Or I should say that's the attribute. Right? The makhraj is something that we discussed before. But you cannot do justice to a letter without its attribute. So ghunna is found in every noon and meme. Whether it has a haraka, whether it is sakin. And in all situations. Now, there's a difference between this, what I'm talking about right now, and noon mushaddad and mim mushaddad. That we're going to talk about much later. That is like inna or mimma. That holding, that is a clear, a ghunna. We're going to discuss that later and the duration, how long you should hold it. But in general, every single meme that you read, every single noon that you read, is going to have some effect coming from the nasal cavity. So that is the attribute of ghunna. It's in every single noon and meme. And that's why when someone becomes sick and their nose becomes clogged, you can't hear their meme and noon. It sounds like that, they're holding their nose and speaking. So those are the 8 sifat that do not have opposites. And with that, we're done with the makharij and the sifat. Now, we have other aspects which are like, add-ons to the whole discussion. We talked about in the very beginning that tajweed is going to be 2 things, the makharij of every letter with its sifat. Right? Reciting every letter from its makhraj with its sifat. So technically speaking, we finished all of that. We finished makharij and we finished sifat. But there's still a lot more that we haven't covered. So these are add-ons to the whole concept of tajweed. Tajweed is incomplete without them. And one of those is idghām. So when 2 letters come next to one another and they're either the same letter or they're similar, what the Arabs used to do is they mix them together out of ease, because it's hard to pronounce. Like if you say instead of وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ, if you say وَلْيَكْتُبَ بَيْنَكُمْ, that sounds a little bit difficult. وَلْيَكْتُبَ بَيْنَكُمْ, تُبَبَيْ, تُبَبَيْ. It's a little bit like a tongue twister. So to remove that, there's two of the same letters, the Arabs will just fuse them together. وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ. Much easier. Instead of saying همت طا همت طائفتين or همت طائفتان, instead of saying it, they just mix them together. همت طائفتان. So this concept of mixing two letters together into one is called idghām. Now, literally in the Arabic language, idghām means to enter something into something else. So if you put something in something else, you would call that action idghām. Right? Taking something, let's say you put cookies in the cookie jar. You're doing idghām of the cookie in the cookie jar. Right? So that is what the word means. And Arabs, they say, أدغمت اللجام في فم الفرس. I have put the bridle on the horse's mouth. Meaning the reins, you put it on the horse's mouth. So you put it inside its mouth. So that they use the word idghām for that. They also say, أدغمت السيف في غمده. I have done idghām of the sword in its sheath. So putting something into another. Put it, if you will, putting it into a container. Now, how this applies to the concept of idghām is when we join, we take a letter and we put it into the other one. So the second letter becomes the container of the first, right? Like putting the cookie in the cookie jar. You have a container, you put something in the container. So when you're doing idghām in tajweed, you're taking the first of two same or similar letters and putting it into the container of the other. Now the actual definition is what I've written on the board. He states here, it is the joining of a non-voweled letter with a voweled letter, meaning non-voweled is sakin, non-voweled. The word they use for haraka is vowel. So taking a sakin letter and joining it with a letter that has a haraka, meaning fatha, dhamma, kasra, so that they become one mushaddad letter. Mushaddad is with a shadda. They become one mushaddad letter of the second type. I'm going to give you an example to clarify it. And then he also says the articulation point is lifted from its position as one movement. So now we can understand this better via an example. The ones that I've mentioned. وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ. Okay. So joining a non-vowel, we could say this is sakin. And joining a non-vowel letter with a vowel letter. That's supposed to be there. I skip that. With a vowel letter. With a vowel letter. And a vowel letter is called mutaharrik, meaning it's a letter with a haraka. Okay. So joining a non-vowel letter. Here in this example, وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ. This ba is sakin. This ba is sakin. And this ba here is maftuh. It has a fatha. You are joining the letter ba, it's non-voweled, it's sakin, doesn't have a haraka, with a letter that has a haraka, so that they become one letter with a shadda. Then you add the shadda. So idghām is adding that shadda by fusing the two together. And the letter, now when they become fused, are you going to consider it the first or the second letter? He says you will consider it the second letter now. That's what he means by of the type of the second. You just consider it the second letter. So what is happening? You're taking one letter and you're fusing it into the other. You are entering it, you're doing idghām of it into the container of the other. The first one becomes sakin. The second one has its haraka. When you enter the second one into the other one, it gets a shadda, and now you treat them both as a second letter. And so that's what idghām is. That's the definition here. Thereafter, he adds something else. He says the makhraj is lifted from its position as one movement. What does that mean? You fuse them in such a way that you only say the letter once. In reality, there's two letters here. 1, 2. How many times is it being pronounced? Only once. Because the makhraj is lifted from its position as one movement, meaning وَلْيَكْتُبْ bay, bay, only once. It's not going to be وَلْيَكْتُبَ bay, وَلْيَكْتُبَ bay. That is no idghām. That's what you would call izhar. Idghām is the fusion of them, such that the makhraj only works once. Right? That's what idghām basically is. And one of you had a question about this last time, like which one is it going to be? It becomes the second letter. The fusion takes place, and the second letter is what remains. Right? You guys can move if you are having difficulty because of the podium. Now, this is a relatively difficult example because it's the same letter. If we do another example, this is what you call mithlain. They're both the same. There's another type of idghām called mutajanisi. They're of the same makhraj, if you will. So not the same letter, but they are the same makhraj, and due to the nearness of the two makhraj, we still do idghām. So an example of that. Yeah, hammat ta. Is it with, it's not with alif lam. Hammat ta'ifatan. Okay. Hammat ta'ifatani. Okay. So here, what's happening is you have two letters. What is the makhraj of ta and ta? Are they two separate makhraj or the same? Ta and ta. They're the same makhraj, but they differ in the sifat. That is where the differences occur. Remember, ta has isti'la, itbaq, whereas ta does not. However, when we discuss the makhraj, ta, ta, and there's another letter, what else has the same makhraj as these two? Ra, dal. Ta, ta, and dal are of the same makhraj. The differences found in those three letters are due to their sifat. And so, based off of the different sifat, they will differ. But these, they have the same makhraj. So these are called mutajanis. We're going to talk about that. You don't need to know the terms yet. But they have terms for if it's the same letters being fused, or two different letters but the same makhraj. And then there's different idghams as well that are outside of riwayat hafs, which we're not really going to talk about. So what did we say idghām was? Joining a non-vowel letter. So this ta loses, it does not have a vowel, doesn't have a haraka. Joining it with a vowel letter as a fatha, ta'ifatan. You join them so that they become one mushaddad letter. They become one mushaddad letter. You add the shadda here, and it is going to be of the second type, meaning they get fused into the second. So all that remains is the second. Right. So how would this be pronounced? Is it going to be hammatta ifatani? Hammatta ifatani? Or maybe in the middle? Hammat ta. No, it becomes the second completely. Hammal. So that the mal, you prepare for the ta. Hammal ta. this whole thing is gone.